Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome to our final edition of Game Grades for the 2025 season. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel and the Coach Bob Shipley. We'll tell you more about our fine sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends at Allegiant Digital Marketing, who've sponsored our Game Grades all season long. Guys, it's a 41-27 win for Texas over Michigan in the Citrus Bowl. Texas starts the calendar year with a bowl win, ends the calendar year with a bowl win, 10 victories for the Longhorns. Let's get right to it. CJ, you and I talked on the quick reactions after the game about this massive game for Arch Manning. I'm going to guess your grade for his performance in this one is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, very good, actually. It's an A+ for me. Look, he felt to me like he was far and away the best player on the field tonight. You know, I think Colin Simmons is very close in that conversation with him, right? The two of them took over this game at moments. And for Arch, anytime I felt like Texas needed an answer, they needed to put points on the board to either stay in this game, to take a lead, whatever it was, Arch willed Texas at times. 3rd and longs, 4th downs, didn't matter. His legs were fantastic. 155 rushing yards, unbelievable. 2 throws early on that I sat there and said, hey, man, I'm not exactly sure if this is going to be a great performance for Arch or not, but ultimately we sat there at the end of the night and said, pretty darn good showing for the kid. A+ for me.
And Coach, while you give your grade, I think it's piggybacking off what CJ said there. Arch in this game, and we've seen him do this late in the year, get to a point. We saw Vince get to that point. We saw Colt get to it. Sam Quinn, the great Texas quarterbacks, get to a point where your performance just elevates everybody around you. That's exactly what Arch did tonight on a night, Coach, where they had a lot of guys either opt out or lost them during the game to injury.
Yeah, it's an A+ for me, without a doubt. I don't know that I've seen a gutsier performance in a long time, certainly by a Texas quarterback. And there's been some good ones, but certainly the toughness that he showed tonight, and also the way, I can't even get my days right. Wednesday night. But the great thing is that I like when he had Parker Livingston drop the pass, and he had who was the other one that got hit in the end zone?
Wingo,
yeah. I saw him getting on his receivers. Did y'all see that he's really stepping up as a leader, and not anybody can do that because everybody has egos. But I thought the way he ran the ball, obviously, the play to seal the game was incredible. And they were not making any ground up on him at all. Incredible. Just a great gutsy performance. I mean, A+.
Yeah, and Jeff, again, we talked about it. He got hit a lot tonight and just kept getting up. Very tough tonight.
It's an A+ for me, and I leave you with 2 numbers on Arch, 10-2. 4 wins for Arch against ranked teams this year, 10 touchdowns accounted for, 0 turnovers in those 4 wins. That's what you want from your quarterback. Let's go to running backs. Coach Shipley, start with you on the running backs. Christian Clark goes for 105 yards. Saw a little bit of Michael Terry in this game. Didn't see James Simon. Probably saw Ryan Niblett maybe get a couple snaps at running back. But, Coach, it was the Christian Clark show, which I did not expect. What's your grade for the running backs?
Considering his lack of playing time this year, and, it takes a while to get your rhythm as a running back. Sometimes it could take a few games, but it's an A for me. I mean, I thought the guy, he's a downhill runner. He kept falling forward for more yards. He was the real deal for us tonight. Without him playing at that level, we don't win the game, because if we're not able to run the ball like we were running the ball, we wouldn't have been able to throw the ball. Even though, obviously, Arch had more rushing yards because of the 60-yarder. But, my goodness, I feel a little better about a running back situation next year, because it's going to have to be a stud to beat him out if he stays healthy.
CJ, I'm going with an A2, and just looking at it, 20 carries for Christian Clark, only 3 of those stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage. Maximized runs in a way I don't know if he was physically able to or confident enough to do earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think that was a large part of it, just getting back to the game, the speed of the game for a young running back, not easy to do. Also for young running backs, sitting in there and putting your body on the line in pass protection. We saw that tonight as well. That was a big question coming into the game. It's an A- for me. And I say it's a minus because, look, I think Christian Clark alone is definitely warranted an A by himself. But I was hoping to see some James Simon. I was hoping to see more of Michael Terry, and we just didn't get to see that tonight for whatever reason. I don't know right now off the bat why that was the case, but for Christian Clark, given the opportunity tonight, yeah, he puts himself into that conversation for next season when it comes to what he could add to this running back room. So that was very encouraging. I thought he was very decisive with his cuts, and I thought he was falling forward more than what we saw in the early part of the season as well.
Coach Shipley, as we go to the receivers, you get to a point in this game where by the start of the fourth quarter, Arch doesn't have Emmett Mosley, Ryan Wingo, and he started the game without DeAndre Moore. There's a point in the year where that would have been a recipe for disaster, but they managed to get it done. Coach, what's your grade for the receivers in this one?
Well, it's a B- for me. And obviously, the two drops were, and I say drops, Ryan Wingo, I mean, you can call that a drop, but I'm telling you, we can sit here on our recliners or whatever and say you should have had that ball. But, you've got a 210-pound DB knocking the heck out of you in the end zone. It's hard to hang on to it. But I know that frustrated Arch. I know Ryan would have liked to have that back. Of course, Parker Livingston with a very, very unusual drop. That just rarely do you see him drop the ball. But I thought our blocking on the perimeter was good, and we left some plays out there, but Khalil Lockett was nice, had a nice game. Obviously, Mosley had a nice game, but I just have a hard time getting over passes that should have been caught.
Yeah, I'm going to go, CJ. I'm going to give it a B, and the only reason why I elevate it a little bit over what Coach had is that you look at the tight ends. They ran probably more 12 personnel than they wanted to, but they were kind of forced to because they were just running out of bodies at receiver. I thought the tight ends blocked about as good as we've seen them block in the run game this year. And then Jack Enders, Coach, to your point, it is easy for us to armchair quarterback Wingo with the drop, but Jack Enders on that touchdown, Arch put good touch on the ball. He took a shot in the end zone and held onto the ball. So I give him credit for that, CJ. I'm giving that whole group a B. What say you?
I'm going to feel pretty harsh here, but it was probably a C+, C. It was in the C range for me. Again, too many balls that hit hands that weren't caught. I thought Arch, for the most part, put passes where they needed to go. The biggest, most redeeming quality tonight was, look, Khalil Lockett gets put in the game and immediately commits a penalty. And then they go deep to him, and he's not running the route very hard. The ball's incomplete. But immediately he comes back and converts on a key third down. And then the ball goes to him again and comes down with a go-ahead touchdown. So redemption, right? It's all about learning on the fly for these young guys. And I bet no one feels more vindicated than the guys sitting here week 6, week 8, week 10 of the season saying, where's Khalil Lockett? Where's Jamie French? Can we get these young guys some opportunity? And, well, you get a 50-50 shot down the sideline and it comes down into a touchdown. Texas never looks back. That's a big play. And that's a great moment for Khalil, who, as we've talked about, has been working all season for it. But, again, it was very difficult night for me with the wide receivers. It felt like there needed to be more when those injuries occurred, and it just never really amounted to what we thought it could be. But hey, a win's a win for me.
Yeah, the Mosley injury for me was the killer because he just so strong hands. He was decisive in the quick games. It seemed like he was on his way to maybe a big game, but got injured late in the first half, didn't return, so we'll never know. CJ, I'll start with you on the offensive line. 0 sacks allowed for Texas in this one. They did that against Vanderbilt too. When you talk about no sacks allowed against a ranked opponent, I don't know how you guys are going to grade this, but man, you look at the totality of it. The wins against ranked opponents against OU, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Michigan, those were probably, along with Ohio State, believe it or not, the 5 best games this offensive line played this year. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, CJ, but it kind of was what it was at the end of the day.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because those are the teams that you would imagine give you the most difficulty with the fronts, the talent up there. But it's probably a B- for me. And that feels tough, right? You score a lot of points. You put 456 yards of offense on the field, but 3 holding penalties, 2 false starts. There was times where your quarterback was laying flat on his back time and time again, multiple times per possession, because he's just getting hit. And I know that there weren't any sacks, but how many times did you sit there and say, hey, Arch evaded pressure and used his legs as a way to escape? I thought Arch was hit all too often tonight. So it wasn't pretty, but again, it's hard to complain when you put 456 yards on the ground. You got 2 guys over 100 yards rushing the football. But to be nitpicky, I've been that way the entire season. It's probably a B- for me.
CJ, I'm gonna match your B-, and Coach, the thing that gets me to a B- is there were pre-snap penalties, there were live ball penalties. They overcame some of that, but that stuff's got to get cleaned up next year. It just has to.
Yeah, I was thinking with the penalties and with we didn't give up a sack, but we're dadgum lucky we didn't give up a sack. It's not because it was great protection up front. So I'm kind of between a C+ and a B-. The penalties, those guys, and maybe they did the best with what we have, to work with, but it's still not good enough to win at the level we need to win at. And Arch avoided some sacks, obviously, but he did take a lot of hits, and so I'm kind of a C+, B- on the offensive line, and I'm hard on those guys, but I've always had high standards for the offensive line because without those guys, we won 41-27, but still the level we need to be playing at, I just don't think is quite there yet.
No, I'm with you, Coach. Competency is where they got to by the end of the year, but I just expected more than that from this group. It kind of, like you said, I think for what they were, how it was constructed, I think they found something that worked when they really needed it to. Guys, the offense overall, CJ, I'll start with you. Your grade for the offense overall. We got an A+ for the quarterback all the way down to maybe C+, B- for the O-line. Where do you settle in?
Yeah, I think it's an A. Look, you only had really the one misstep right before halftime. When the errant snap goes over the head, you don't get points before halftime. But again, if you clean up penalties, you're looking at a very, very deep, talented team offensively again for 2026. But that's a big if because, we just watched this team for 13 games, and it didn't look like at any point this year it was going to be remedied. So that's the key. But ultimately for me, it was an A for the offense.
Coach, I'm going A- just because as good as Arch and Christian Clark were, I got to keep it in the A category. So I'm going A-. Where are you going for the offense?
I'm going B+. I'm sorry to be the downer, but poor clock management. I felt like at the end of the second quarter, we Zach Andrews caught the pass and went out of bounds. That's a big no-no. And then 2 incompletions in a row. Michigan had all their timeouts. When they got the ball and they were able to go down and get a field goal out of it, so I believe they got a field goal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they missed the field goal. They missed the field goal at the end.
Oh, that's right. They missed the field goal. Yeah. But, again, the snap over the head, there seemed to have been miscommunication with the offensive line on that because they were all turning around talking and Arch is trying to get them straight. And then I think Parker Livingston, it looked like, was hearing something from the sideline, like, maybe what the play was supposed to be, and he was turned around, trying to tell everybody. It just looked like mass confusion out there. But an outstanding job, obviously, by some guys and by all the guys at times, but still not up to the standard that that we need to be at. So I hate to be a Debbie Downer, even though B+. Hey, when I was in school, I was happy with the B+. But
hey, that'll get you graduating with honors in some places, Coach. But I agree with you. That's kind of the downer for me. The Benny Hill music was playing on that possession because you had 1st and 10 at the Michigan 21, and somehow that drive ended with a punt. So I'm with you on that. That was forgettable. But overall, pretty good night for the offense. Really good night for QB1. CJ, as we go to the defense, D-line wise, I was disappointed. We didn't see some more kind of tight looks from Texas using 3 down linemen. Before we get really into it, I do want to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. They've been our sponsor for our grades segment the entire season. That's our friends over at Allegiant Digital Marketing. Did you know that among the top 9 challenges business owners face, the most difficult ones include finding customers, increasing brand awareness, digital advertising, and lead generation? What if I could point you to a local homegrown agency here in Austin that can solve all of those problems for your business once and for all? For over 25 years, Allegiant Digital Marketing founder and CEO Chad Markham, he's a UT grad and the instructor of the Digital Marketing Boot Camp at UT Austin, has helped thousands of businesses overcome these challenges. packages. Take advantage of their Hook 'em Horn special and save up to $2,500 in advertising. Visit allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball. Again, that's allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball to learn more today. And thanks to Chad Markham and our friends at Allegiant Digital Marketing for sponsoring our grades segment. CJ, as I was saying about the defensive line, I was disappointed we didn't see some more of that tight alignment that we've seen in games where teams use heavier personnel. Other than that, I thought Texas did a pretty decent job. What was your grade for the defensive line?
Yeah, this was going to be a tough game, and the defensive line probably had to do more in this game than they were probably ever asked this season, knowing that how thin the linebacking room was. A lot of that responsibility fell on their shoulders. I thought they did well. For the defense as a whole, I know we'll get to that, but I thought they did well. I thought Alex January was noticeable tonight. I sat around and said, okay, Hero was in the backfield pretty often. Colin Simmons, how could you not sit there? But we got to see Smith and Robo towards the back end on the backside. Some of the younger guys as the game was winding up. That's valuable, right? This is valuable time. But for me, it's probably a B+. I didn't think that there was anything astounding in one way or the other. So solid game all the way around for me.
Yeah, Coach, it's a solid B for me. Like CJ said, they had some trouble with the quarterback run game at times. The zone read stuff they kind of caught flat-footed a little bit. I'd go solid B for the D-line, Coach. What about you?
Yeah, I'm at a B too. I think there were some pretty big holes for the running back to get through, when we had to get to the second level or the linebacker level before anybody was able to, get a hand on him. And sometimes that's, sometimes those guys are supposed to keep the offensive line off the linebackers. I understand that, but, seemed like the pressure we got was when we were bringing pressure. It wasn't, we were rushing forward. We just weren't getting back there and weren't really getting much pressure on them. But, they tightened up. I don't know why. And maybe they tried, and I just wasn't paying that close attention. But I really thought the quarterback would be running more in the second half with the success they had in the first half. And he did have a couple of runs in the second half. But the way he was going in the first half, I was a little bit worried about that. But it's a B for me. I thought they did a respectable job.
Yeah, that's probably where it comes out to a B. Let's go to the linebacker group. Coach Shipley, I'll start with you. I almost feel like with the opt-outs and the bodies they were missing, I almost got to grade this one on a curve a little bit. Some really, really good, some not so good. Where do you come out on the linebackers in this one?
That's a really tough one. I'm kind of probably at an A-, B+ range. I just thought Anthony Smith, 9 tackles, 8 solos, a tackle for a loss, interception. I mean, he was all over the field. And, it's interesting to hear Coach Sark talk about him after the game and, how he felt like by the end of the season, he was the man in that room, and the leader in that room. So anyway, not much else I can add to that, but thank goodness for Anthony Smith.
Yeah, CJ, we saw Anthony Smith with the 2 interceptions. I'm with Coach. It comes out to about, I'll give it a B+. Because I just given that group some grace, but Anthony Smith finishes with the 2 interceptions. But for me, the fact that we saw Brad Spence and Bo Barnes flash really, really positive signs moving forward for that group.
No, absolutely, and I actually think it's probably an A-. And I think I'm grading a little bit on a curve here, given the situation and the depth and the guys that were in the room. But look, you get the 2 interceptions from Anthony Smith, and I sat there today saying, "Whoa, he looks unbelievable." And we saw glimpses, right? He had some positive moments throughout the season. Tonight, he looked like he was ready to be an all-conference level player for Texas. Like, he was spectacular. I thought Bo Barnes stepping in and, getting the sack immediately. And you're sitting there just like, the way he chased down, Underwood for that sack, you're sitting there saying, that's a player, right? He's doing that at probably 6'2", 245 pounds, chasing down a quarterback and made it look very easy. I love that, right? So, knowing that they were thin, shorthanded, whatever you want to call it, I thought it was a commendable performance. A- for me with that.
Coach, I'll start with you in the secondary because I think this is one of those old coaching adages. I love the effort in the secondary. They might not always been hitting the right guy or been in the right place, but they were going 100 miles an hour while they were doing it. some of that stuff can be fixed. But what's your grade for the secondary in this one?
Yeah, I would say a B+. I hesitate to give out an A or an A-, just because of what you said. But when you look at what we had to deal with and the starters that were missing back there, they did a good job. And really, when we had to make the stops and get their offense off the field, we were able to do it. We had some nice pass breakups. I thought they did. Overall, I might could be talked into an A-, but for me, it was probably a B+.
Yeah, CJ, that I'm about it somewhere between a B and a B+. You mentioned redemption, talking about on offense with Khalil Lockett. I felt that way about Cade Phillips tonight. There was a portion in the second quarter, it got pretty rough for him. We had a big TFL in the second half. Thought was in place to make plays on the ball. And shout out to Wardell Mack, because one of those red zone stops Coach was talking about, you were already down. Kobe Black left, I'm assuming, was in concussion protocol in the first half. We didn't see him again. Then Roberson gets dinged up. Man, you got Wardell Mack playing corner in a red zone possession, and he gets a pick. So, and props to him for stepping up.
No, absolutely. And, that was probably as physical a safety room, defensive back room in general that we've seen, right? You talk about that Warren Roberson hit. I mean, he damn near knocked himself out, trying to make that hit. Jelani McDonald hit a guy so hard he went backward 5 yards. I didn't get him down on the ground, but you're saying, whoa, they're thudding around over there pretty good. Jonah Williams had a couple moments where I was like, that's kind of what I hope to see with Jonah Williams. So encouraging moments there. I thought there were a lot of plays on the football. Cade Phillips' best play of the night was actually a play on a man who wasn't even his. He was playing kind of that cover 3 in the end zone area. Didn't have any man. So what do? You find work, right, Coach? And you run back, or you found someone, run crossing the end zone, went straight backwards, made a play on the football, incomplete, and ball that hit a wide receiver in the hands. Unbelievable play for Cade. And that just kind of shows you the potential with these guys. It's there. Now it's about getting it consistently time and time again. The other thing I really like tonight is a lot of defensive backs making plays on the football. You mentioned Wardell Mack getting his head turned around. Warren Roberson did that as well a couple times. That's something that I didn't think Texas did a great job of this year, but it was evident tonight.
Yeah, again, your season leaders in pass breakups at the end of the day are going to be Cade Phillips and Grayson Littleton, 2 guys that will be back next year. So it's good for the secondary. Coach, I'll start with you on the overall grades for the defense. I feel like it comes out to probably about a B+, somewhere between a B and a B+. I'll give it a B+. Just again, I'm grading on a curve. I'm giving some of these guys grace. To finish +2 in turnover margin and get some red zone stops when you're down basically 7 starters, it's about as good an effort as you could ask for from the defense.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm glad you said that. And I'm sometimes hard on those guys, but considering all the starters that we had out, I certainly think a B+ is a deserving grade for those guys. And like you said, CJ, the way they're flying around out there, man. And then momentum started turning, and they started getting our offense the ball back. And we started making some turnovers, and it was a fun thing. We talked this week on the winning drive about there's going to be 2 or 3 guys that are going to just really stand out this game that we're not really expecting. That we don't know who they're going to be, but some guys are going to step up, and I certainly think that some guys did that. Certainly on offense, with running back position, but defensively, given what they had and the lack of experience we had on the field, I certainly think they're deserving of a B+.
I got a take here, and it might be a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but was Ty Anthony Smith's performance tonight the best single game performance we've seen from a Longhorn this year? Because I mean, so. Lead the team in tackles, 2 takeaways on 2 consecutive plays, tackle for loss or 2 in there as well. I mean, to me, he was the highlight of tonight defensively, and a large reason why, that grade for the first half won't mirror that of the second when Texas really turned up the heat and probably ended with a B+-ish performance with 3 takeaways tonight.
The only game, CJ, off the top of my head, Anthony Hill was really good against Georgia, even in a loss. Colin Simmons against Kentucky, because there were some times in that game in the second half where you needed him to get home on some 3rd downs, and he did. But to your point, if we're putting it in that category, then yes, obviously, It was a special night for Ty Anthony Smith. I'll end this talking about the defense. If you'd have told me going into the game that Texas was going to hold Andrew Marsh to 10 yards on 3 receptions, might have thought, yeah, they probably win by a couple of scores. That's the good news. The bad news is Andrew Marsh, even with 10 yards receiving, finishes with 163 all-purpose yards because of what he did in the kicking game. Coach, I hate to give it in a win. I hate to give a unit a failing grade, and I don't want to because the 2 Mason Shipley field goals, especially that 43-yarder he hit early where it looked like it was going out and then the wind kind of took it back in. But, man, special teams was not good in this one overall.
Yeah, it's we had I don't know what Bowmeister averaged 42 or 43 yards a punt. The kicking was good. I'm talking about extra points and field goals, obviously. That there must have been a lot of wind there, CJ, for us to be kicking the ball so short and giving him an opportunity to return it time after time after time. So to me, you almost have to put a slash between the grades, because the coverage team was an F, really.
Yeah.
There's I don't know how you can look at it any other way. We never really got what I think maybe we had one decent punt return, but we never really got a punt return going. So I kind of look at it as our place kicker did what he was supposed to do. He's there to make field goals and extra points, and he did that. And that obviously is an A, but our coverage was pretty much an F to me.
Yeah, and that to me felt like a very easy coaching fix. Hey, if you're down 20 players, a lot of them probably very important in special teams, why bother with new players and new responsibilities and new roles and something as important as kickoff return or kickoff, right? Why even bother with that? Why chance it? I know Texas likes pinning deep. I know they like kicking to that corner and trusting their athletes, but you got a lot of guys in positions they've never played before. Why bother with that? Especially after the first time you see, oh, shoot, we don't have containment or our responsibilities in our lanes, they're not clear. I just didn't agree with that. It was sloppy all the way around. Coach, you mentioned that the big punt return from Niblett again that gets Texas into I believe the Michigan 35 or something in that area. Well, guess what? You had a penalty on that play as well. You had another penalty later on another return. You backed it up. Again, it just the undisciplined nature of this team, it bleeds into special teams more than anything else this year, and that it has to change. I know that this should be a positive. Texas wins the bowl game. They 10 wins again. And I'm sitting here saying, well, special teams is a huge issue. If it's not a punt return touchdown, which don't get me wrong, is saved Texas a couple times this year, it's just the same thing time and time again where special teams for the most part just feels like it's a leaky faucet and you can't find, where the water's going. It's just coming and coming and coming. And it's all in the bad area of the house,
Coach, to CJ's point, Rod, and I'll give Rod Babers a shout out because Rod pointed this out during the watch with us because I mentioned it. At times where your kick coverage was shoddy. So it's not like these guys haven't been playing special teams all year. It's Roberson and Littleton and guys that have been on kicking game all year. And Rod pointed out, he said, but you got to think because of your numbers, those guys are playing more defensive snaps than they played all year. So to CJ's point, there might have been times where you're just better kicking the ball out of bounds and not having those guys just run down and cover a kick and they have to go right back to playing defense.
Yeah, that's a good point. But there were a few new ones out there, but it just didn't seem like there was a sense of urgency, on covering kicks. It's just, he's a very good kick returner, obviously, but I can understand him getting one, but continually, getting the ball close to midfield is just sickening.
Coach, I know you're chomping at the bit to get to that lat pull down machine in Jordan's weight room by the time we're done with this. So we'll wrap it up. I'll let you go first, Coach. Final thoughts on wherever you want to go, Coach, to close this out. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm telling you, what an exciting game. Actually, we've seen some great games, TCU and, USC and the Vanderbilt, tried to come back and, get in that Mizzou game. And, it's been fun, but I think ours was the funnest, game to watch. It wasn't a playoff game. And I'm excited. I'm excited because I saw Arch even step it up another level, with his leadership, with his determination. he could have got down on the receivers for dropping those balls. And really the only bad pass that Arch made was that under route, and he just didn't get his feet set, and it just kind of sailed on a little bit. That was probably going to be a touchdown because everybody was going the opposite direction. But I'm excited about where we're at. I thought Sark had one of his better game calling nights, days, and then it was a wide open offense, and you can do that when your running backs running the football. When you're able to run the ball, you can do that. I thought he pulled out some things that we haven't seen much, and overall, it's just an exciting way to end the season. Even though Michigan obviously is in a lot of turmoil, they played hard. They really did until we, really decided to, close the door on them and get them out of the game. So I think it's a positive thing for two reasons. I think it's obviously positive for, Arch Manning and then Christian Clark. Those two excite me going into next year. I'm not saying Christian Clark will be the guy the whole season next year. I don't know. But after the way he played against Michigan, I don't think that would be a bad thing.
Should be noted that even with all the personnel Texas was missing on offense, 41 points, that's the most allowed by a Wink Martindale Michigan defense in his two seasons as defensive coordinator. CJ, you get the last word.
Yeah, no, again, it's encouraging seeing the individuals that we haven't seen a lot this year stand up and make plays like this against Michigan, right? Let's not forget, this is a very quality opponent with a lot of talent over there. So for Ty Anthony Smith, Christian Clark, right, that's awesome. Cade Phillips, Grayson Littleton, we know the youngsters, Khalid Lockett now getting into the mix as well. I think it's fantastic, right? I think Sark also wants to utilize more and more of Nick Townsend, second week in a row where he's had a rushing attempt. So that to me is fun. That's great. But it's going to be a brand new team next year with hopefully a lot of these remaining pieces, like a Colin Simmons, a Ty Smith, a Arch Manning, right? We know that they've got some dogs already in there. Now it's about supplementing that roster and building around to bring out the most of that talent or even adding more talent. So that's going to be exciting for me. And we'll see what Texas does at wide receiver as well.
Yeah, I'll worry about the portal on Friday. I'm just glad Texas got the W and we can have something to feel good about at the end of it was a long season, sometimes a frustrating season, but overall, man, you win 10 games. You can be happy about that. Take that to the bank. Coach CJ, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise on this one and all season long. CJ's feeling cheesy. He's got his hat on. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends over at Legion Digital Marketing for sponsoring it. Just remember, if you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access for just $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage all year round. For Coach, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Happy New Year, and until next time, welcome.